everybody, I'm Corinne Blackstone and welcome to my craft room. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about how to make your very own reusable stencils. Now, before we get started, be sure that you're subscribed here on YouTube. That way you don't miss out on any fun, crafty content we have coming. You can subscribe by hitting the subscribe button down below. It's completely free. Now you're going to need some supplies, and I highly recommend some mylar film. This is a great product. It's thin enough to cut with the Cricut, and you can use this with any of your Cricut machines. And I just got this on Amazon. I will link it down below. You're also going to want some stencil brushes for actually using your stencil. I recommend these kind that have bristles and not this kind that has a sponge tip. This just holds a little bit too much paint and can cause quite a bit of bleeding. And then you're going to need some paint. I just use acrylic paint, but you can really use whatever paint that you want. And then I'm going to show you how to make stencils both with words, which I know are a little hard to see, and then I'm going to show you how to make this one with a little ghosty guy, and then a really simple pumpkin face, and that way you're going to have these really great looking designs. Now I know these bled a little. The bleed is caused by the wood, not by the stencil itself. This wood was not the greatest choice to use for these, but what's great about these is you can hold these down with some tape, or you could even use a spray adhesive, and these are easy to just wash off and reuse. So simple. But I'm going to show you how to make bridges to make sure all of your stencil pieces stay in place. I feel like that's something that a lot of creators skip when teaching you how to make stencils. They'll show you how to make a super simple one like this guy, and then skip over all the hard stuff like ones that have words with letter centers. So I'm going to show you everything you need to know to make the perfect reusable stencil. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, I do want to show you one with words because I feel like words can be real confusing. So I'm just going to grab this one right here because this does have some interesting little pieces and parts. Now, again, I like to change the color. We'll just make it kind of like a peachy color. And let's make the background kind of blue so that we can really get an idea of where our paint is going to go through. Now you'll notice that we have a few of these letter centers right here. And then we also have, these little pieces that are kind of by themselves. Now we don't need to worry about those pieces by themselves because we are going to cut out all the parts that are, right here, kind of in between all of this. So we don't have to worry about like this little piece or like here, but the centers of the letters, so the E's and the S's, we're going to need to create those bridges. So this can be a little bit confusing too, but I promise it's actually easier than you think it is. So with this one, we're going to do this in a little bit different of a way because making the bridges for this is a little more confusing. I hope this helps. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to grab the shape now and grab the square. Now, I don't know how big I'm making this, so I'm just going to kind of make the square a bit bigger than the design, and we'll resize it in a bit. I want to send the square to the back, and then we're going to use the slice option for this because this is going to make it easier to visualize where you need the bridges. So what we'll do is we're going to grab the square and the design, and we're going to use slice, and I'll get rid of the two slice results up here. Now, you'll see that where our background is, which is the blue here, is where our paint will go through. And you'll notice that you've got some stuff that's floating in the middle of space, which is these S's and these E's. So what you're going to do is build those bridges. And this can be a really helpful way to build the bridge versus doing it like we did with the ghost if you have a little bit of like a visual issue that you maybe need to see a little bit better. So I like to make my bridge just like always, and I make it pretty small. And then I'm just going to kind of shove it across this. As long as it's not going across any of your other letters, it does not matter how big you make it. But you can see here with the E, it's going to go across the S up there. So we'll need to make the bridge a lot shorter for the E. But all I'm doing is just kind of throwing the bridge across the S there and across the S down here. And then we'll do the same for the E. But like I said, we need to make the E a little bit smaller. Now, Design Space does not love to work with the really little thin lines, and you need to zoom in a bit to see it and see how it kind of moved it where I didn't want it. And now for some reason, it's like, I don't want you to grab that and just being a pain. So I'm going to grab it and then I'm going to zoom back out because I moved this a little bit and I know that this one over here is wrong. So I need to move it back over. You just grab it and just scooch it back over. So once you have the bridges that you need, so we have it across the two S's and the E, there's nothing else that is detached. You're going to go ahead, select this, and you're going to go down to combine, and you can use unite or weld, whichever one you want to. It doesn't matter. Either one of them is fine. Once I've done that, now when I cut this out, it's going to keep the little lines between our designs. Now this is too big, obviously, for it to cut, but we're going to do it just like that. Very simple. I sized it down. Same concept here with the ghost one that we want to do. So I'm going to hide this and I'm going to bring in the ghost. And I think the ghost is a little bit easier, but do you. But it can be really helpful. I'm going to go size this down. I'm going to go into the shapes. I'm going to grab that square, and I just find it easier and more visually appealing if I do it this way. Again, I'm just going to make this kind of bigger than the design. I'm just kind of guessing. We'll resize it in a little bit. I'm going to send the square to the back, and I'm going to change the color of the ghost because obviously you can't see him. But now we can see him. We get a good kind of visualization of where he's going to be. And I'm going to select both items, and I'm going to align them and center them. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of it. I'm going to slice it, and then I'm going to delete the images of the ghost. That way I can see what pieces are not connected to the black part. Now with this design, it can be a little bit confusing because in your head, you're like, oh, I need to hold in the eyeballs, but you actually don't. The only part you have to hold in is the center here. So we just are going to add like one quick little bridge, and it's very simple. Like in my brain, this took me a while to kind of work through, but I want to show you this because you got to think about it. Okay, the paint is going through what parts need to be held on, and the only part that has to be held on is the middle of your ghost. So what I'm going to do is just, again, using these bridges are really what's going to make your designs. Let me change the color of this so that you can see it. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to thin this out. And you can make it fairly thin. It does not have to be real big. We can thin it out again in just a second. And all I'm going to do is put it just right across his little waist here. And I'm just going to make this little thin bridge. And it does not have to be very big. But what you're going to notice is that it's going to go across so that it's going to connect. So like if I'm standing over here on the outside island and I need to get into the inside island, which is his little body, I can do that with these bridges. So this only needs that one single bridge. Now all I have to do is select all of the items, which is just our square and our line here. And all I'm going to do is go down to combine, and I'm going to unite them. Now you'll see that when we cut this, these little lines are going to hold his middle together. Again, the eyes are going to cut out, the mouth is going to cut out. It's going to cut out everything that's blue. Everything that's blue is going to cut out. So we need to make sure that this center piece of the ghost stays together. Now, again, I know that it's confusing, and I think the more that you work with stencils, the more that you work with different designs, it will help you. I don't know where this random little square is hiding. Okay, I found him. That was bothering me. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out again, and let's resize this guy just, to see. Let's make him a little bit smaller. He doesn't have to be tiny. And let's bring in our other designs. So again, we have this one, and then we also have the jack-o'-lantern face. So you've got a couple different ones that are going to be a little bit more involved or a little more confusing, but you can see like this one, super simple. I'm also going to just make these all the same color because I'm cutting them on the same material. So I don't want to have to deal with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and change the background color back to white. And now you really can get a visual still of where the bridges are, where you don't need bridges because this is just all solid pieces. But if you have things that are floating in the middle of things, you need to connect them. Now what I'm going to do is save this design. I'm going to call this Halloween Stencils and go ahead and click Save. Now I'm going to hit the Make button to show you what these are going to look like on your mat. Now, like I said, I'm using the same material for all of these, but they don't all fit on the same mat, which is fine. I'm fine with using multiple. So our ghost, and then you can just see those little bridges right here. Then we have our little jack-o'-lantern and the sup witches one, where again, you can see the bridges are connected. Now this will make a lot more sense when you see them all cut out. And sometimes I feel like you do have a little bit of trial and error. So I always recommend if you're not sure that your stencil is going to hold together, don't use stencil material right away. I want you to go ahead and use some cardstock because that's going to help you see if your stencil was created correctly while not wasting kind of expensive stencil material. So let's head over to the machine and get these cut out. Now, one thing that you want to do, especially when you're working with a brand new material like I am here with these new mylar sheets, is do some test cutting. So I've set this first to just like a plastic setting that I found. I don't remember exactly which one. And all I do is I just cut out a small star from the film. That way I can see if that's going to cut out, and it allows me to check that setting before I cut the entire design. Now, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. That first setting absolutely did not work. It just did not cut. And what I do is I'm going to go ahead and unload this, and I'm going to look and see where that star is and see if it cut out. Now, sometimes it looks like it didn't, but you can like push it out with your finger, and that I would consider an okay cut, but this one wasn't cut at all. So I'm going to load it in again, and on this one, I'm going to cut this on the mylar film setting. Now that setting has a much heavier setting, like pressure, so it's going to work pretty good. And it does work really, really well. You'll want to do a test cut anytime that you start with a new material. One of the great things that you can do in Cricut Design Space is actually see the pressure of your cut settings. If you go under materials, and then you can go all the way down to the list of your materials, and you'll see a materials setting option. If you click on that, you'll see all the information, like what's the pressure, what tool can you use, and how many times will it cut around. And you can also use that section to set your own custom setting. Now, the mylar film setting did an amazing job with this, so that's the setting we are going to go with. Now that we've done our test cuts and found the right setting, which for me is acetate, we're gonna go ahead and load this. It's gonna cut our ghost stencil first, and then I'll cut the other two stencils in just a minute. Now, before I unload this, I do want to just double check the cut. Even though I did that test cut, it's just always best to make sure it cut. It looks like it cut really lovely. So I'm going to go ahead and peel this part off. Now, you can always save this piece of acetate because there is still space on it if you want to make like smaller stencils. I'm going to flip this over and kind of roll this off. This mat is pretty sticky. So I'm going to kind of roll this off. And I do want to be careful because I have those really thin little bridges. So I'm going to go in here and kind of pull this little ghost away. But again, I've got those bridges and they're thin, so I do want to be really gentle. You're going to want to be really, really gentle with this so you don't rip those bridges because I made them super thin. But I'm just going to really carefully kind of push him away. And you also want to be careful because you've got those lines from the balloons. So you've got little pieces there that you don't want to like damage. So just take your time. And you do want to use the sticky mat because if you don't, it might cause your acetate to move a little bit. Whew. Let me tell you, that was a little nerve-wracking, but I got him out, and now you can see the ghost remains with his little bridges. I'm going to peel off this, which you could honestly save and use if you wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and peel this off. I'm going to cut the other two out, and then I'm going to show you how we use our stencils. The first thing I want to do is I want to tape these down. You could use a spray adhesive as well, but I'm just going to use a little bit of painter's tape, which will work just fine. And I'm going to stencil all of them at the same time. I just want you to see the different designs and the different like stencil with the bridges and stuff so that you can see what those are going to look like. So you can just see, I'm just putting tape kind of on the edges. You don't have to be too crazy with this. I'm going to put a little bit up here just to kind of hold that down. Now, I've got a couple different stencil brushes. Do not recommend these ones. So these are like super cheap little foam brushes. These are awful. They hold too much paint and they end up giving you like way too much bleed. So do not recommend these, but you want to use ones like these that have bristles. Now this one's obviously huge. Don't use this one real often. I prefer like this one here. I got at Michael's. I think I actually got these ones at Michael's too. These are Craftsmart brand, which I believe is Michael's, but these work just fine. This is like a Martha Stewart one, but you want a bristle brush, okay, or fall over. And then I always recommend, like I have a paper towel, and that's where I put my paint. Sometimes I'll use a paper plate, but I like to put it on something that is going to be a little absorbent. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I had the lid off of that. I don't remember if I'd used this paint before. I'm using black just so you can see it a lot easier, but you use whatever color you want. And it was definitely not shaken very well, so it is real goopy. I'm gonna fold this a second time because it's real goopy. I'm going to shake this up really quick. Once I'm done with that, then we can go ahead and stencil. Now that I've got paint that actually looks like paint, you always want to make sure, you're going to put your brush into the paint, and then I want you to dab a lot of the paint off. And then when you go to stencil, you're going to use an up and down motion, never wiping. So you're just going to tap and fill your design just like this. And you want to make sure that you're tapping. You never want to wipe across the stencil. So always just a simple up and down tapping motion. Now I will say eventually this tapping sound gets real annoying, but it's just what you gotta do to make sure your stencil comes out correctly. Now I don't think you need to necessarily watch me do this in real time, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tap my little heart out, get all of these stencils covered, and then I'll show you what they look like once we're ready to peel off the stencil. I've got another paper towel because I'm going to lay these on there because the paint is still wet. Now you can wash these, which is fantastic because that's what makes them reusable. You don't have to, but you absolutely can wash any of this extra paint off. Now I do a lot of times wait for it fully to dry, but I'm lazy and I don't want to wait. So I'm just going to carefully peel off the tape and then peel up the stencil. So you can see that we covered the whole stencil with that paint. And then, like I said, now I'm just going to very carefully peel up the tape. I'm going to stick that one over there. It's got paint on it. And I'm just very carefully taking the tape off of these. The tape is great. The painter's tape does not stick that hard. Ooh, he moved, so I'm going to go ahead and lift him. He moved, so he got a little bit of what I would call some unwanted bleed. But in general, he looks pretty darn good. Now I'm going to try to get this tape off without anybody moving. Normally I would go one at a time, so it would be much cleaner, but it's fine. Then you're going to lift up your stencil. Oh, I moved that one too, and I knew it was going to be bad. These may not be perfect as well. This wood is not exactly ideal for stenciling. I just wanted to make sure to try them. The ghost came out much better. So keep that in mind as well when you're doing this. You want to use a much smoother wood than I used, but they came out really good regardless, minus this little fudge over here. But I did bleed a little bit just because of the wood itself. It's very absorbent wood. This is just from Hobby Lobby. Would not recommend for necessarily stenciling, but I had to work with what I had. But I think it came out really good. So you can see that using reusable stencils is super easy. Making them is also really easy. If you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm always happy to answer those for you. Be sure that you're subscribed here on YouTube. You just have to hit the little subscribe button that's right down in this corner. And it is completely free to subscribe. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and as always, happy crafting.